Okay, so we are now recording. So welcome to our Women at Work Trade Circle webinar. We would have been in person if it was a non-COVID-19 world, but this is the new normal, right? So we appreciate your time with Kacie Brewer from United Rentals and Cherelle Cortez here from Dunn Construction. And you all are also in much more territories. Cherelle, what is Dunn doing, and where are you all operating right now?
Yeah, so we have 22 offices, and I cover the Southeast region. So I'm based in Atlanta, but I'm over Atlanta, Savannah, Charlotte, Nashville, Tampa, Raleigh.
Great.
So we're a national company.
Great. And senior, title-wise, senior diversity and inclusion manager for the East region, right? So you're on the Eastern Seaboard. So how many offices does that include for you?
So that's 7 locations for me. Luckily, I do have some support. I think you've met China Green. She's our diversity specialist, and she's out of the Charlotte office. So she's actually boots on the ground for North Carolina, including Raleigh as well.
Awesome. Great. And Kacie, you're out of Houston, correct?
Yes. So I'm out of Houston, so I'm excited that I'm still able to join y'all, even if it was supposed to be in Charlotte. But so I work for United Rentals. I'm new into the role as of January, but I've been dabbling in the D&I space for a while. We just had our first, I guess I'm the first ever diversity position that we've had. And so I was actually, well, I guess we'll talk about it later, but my title is actually inclusion and diversity, because you can't have, diversity without inclusion. So that was one thing whenever I moved over. I was in the HR business partner world and came over to the D&I space. That was something that one of those things I just wanted to make sure that happened with how we were moving into creating the department. But so United Rentals, we have about 20,000 employees, about 1,200 locations. Our field employees are essential right now, so everyone is working. We're doing curbside at our locations. And so our locations will be anywhere from 5 to 10 people up to around 100 employees. And then we do have different corporate campuses, Stamford, Connecticut, Charlotte, and then Scottsdale, Arizona. And we do have a presence in Europe, a new presence. Another opportunity that we'll be learning over the next few years is, that looks completely different whenever you take the leap. So a lot of fun and exciting things for sure, though.
Great. Well, and first off, I had the pleasure of having a United Rentals trailer. So I was in 2 of the locations in Charlotte yesterday, picking up pallets that were adaptive reuse for a Mother's Day build for us at She Built the City. And they were definitely socially distanced. So it was really great at both locations. I check that out when I have to travel around and go in places. So I always report back, and they passed with flying colors at both the Rock Hill and the North Charlotte location. Okay, to dive right in for both of you, Kacie, since you were touching on it, let's start with you. Is how did you get into your role? This is a new role for a lot of industries, and especially construction. So loving the fact that it's existing and that you two are in them. So how did you get into this? You mentioned HR.
Yeah. So I joined United Rentals through an acquisition in 2014. And that was actually the same year that the company rolled out employee resource groups. So even though we didn't have a D&I department or anything like that, there was a need within the culture to kind of, start the process on employee resource groups. So as I was coming over, I was getting invited to these Women United things, and I didn't really know what it was. So I actually joined the company, and I've grown with the employee resource groups. And it's just, I didn't realize that I would find passion in this prior to joining United Rentals. I didn't really ever think it was a thing, because I had only had one position right out of college, was there a few years, and then came over to United. But it just kind of, the opportunity grew. And so for me, kind of in my personal development plan with my boss and my mentor, I was kind of just asked to take, the Women United ERG specifically kind of to the next level. How can we structure it? How can we get more female leaders involved? What does it look like? We're a very spread out company. We don't get to meet up that often. So how do we make it work? And so that's how I really started getting involved. Then I started getting a little bit more involved in Veterans United, which is our second ERG, and then Together United, which is, it started as a multicultural ERG, but now it's kind of like our inclusion council, or kind of our inclusive of all ERG. And then just
for people who don't know, what does ERG stand for?
Sorry,
acronym.
Employee Resource Group.
Got it.
Resource Group. So some people refer to them as BRGs too, so Business Resource Group as well. They all kind of have the same intended goal. Originally started as affinity groups, but we don't say that anymore. ERGs or BRGs. But you know, it was kind of like as I got more involved, as more opportunity came, and there was more projects. The employee resource groups were coming up with the ideas, and someone needed to kind of be that support to facilitate those projects. And we also started including more learning, inclusive learning, kind of leadership, short snippets into different programs. And so it all just evolved, and I was doing the position part-time, and it finally turned into a full-time role in January. So it was really evolution, right time, right place at the right time. The culture really created it. I didn't create it. The company didn't create it. Just everything just was kind of moving in the right direction, and there was a need for it. And so it's me solo right now, but my whole goal is to kind of influence in every department. So I have a ton of help. Everyone's super passionate about it, but as far as the D&I department, it is Kacie Brewer. So.
Got it. So Cherelle, what about you? Because JE Dunn's a little bit different, and definitely heavy construction right now. So what does JE Dunn do for those who don't know, and then your role in how you got it in diversity and inclusion? Because that's a real championed role at JE Dunn, I will say that. There's a great department.
Oh, absolutely. So we are a commercial builder. Again, we have 22 offices across the U.S., and we focus on several market sectors: aviation, healthcare, K through 12, higher education, student housing, and hospitality. We do a lot of hotels. So I'm lucky. I have 4 counterparts throughout the region. So there is me in South Central, West, Midwest, and East, of course. So we collaborate and work together. And really my main focus is working with senior leadership, making sure that we are implementing our diversity goals and initiatives, especially when it comes to achieving our clients' expectations on our projects. So I'll talk a little bit briefly on how I got into my position. I've been with the company for 16 years, and originally from Denver, Colorado. And Denver was the second office to roll out our diversity and inclusion initiatives. So our leader came there to roll out those initiatives, and I was tasked to be a part of those goals and said, hey, Cherelle, this is a new initiative. Do you want to get a part? Do you want to be a part of it? So I gladly said yes, but not really knowing what diversity and inclusion was. So soon after that, we relocated to Atlanta, Georgia with my family, and I stayed with the company. And it was completely different from Denver, Colorado when it comes to diversity and inclusion. So I soon got offered a full-time position for the Southeast region. And I really didn't know, like, what is this diversity and inclusion? I know a little bit about it. So I started doing a lot of research. I did a lot of self-education. I made sure that I started interacting with people that had a D&I position for quite some time. So making sure I was surrounding myself with people that were well diverse and well-rounded within this space where I can get feedback, bounce questions off of. And then also I was surrounded by a group of great leaders that empowered me, supported me, inspired me to grow in this role. So it was all new to me. I didn't know much about it. My background is in computer technology, so diversity and inclusion, that's completely different. And I did not have the HR background. So this position has definitely been inspirational, very passionate about it. And I would say that it gives me a lot of gratification with helping small businesses grow, helping our community, and then also working with our internal resources, our internal employees. So I love this position. I've been doing it, I would say, for about 5.5 years. And I've just seen myself grow tremendously. And I continue to take classes and just education courses because things change all the time. And I want to make sure that I remain relevant in this position.
Great, thanks. Well, and so to take it from there, here's what I know I get at She Built the City and being in construction for 20 years and many of the times being the only woman in the room and not having that support. Had great companies, but they never wanted to talk about it, never wanted to talk about not being, you know, the gender bias or the equality. And we're not even getting into the multicultural piece of this. You know, for me, it's more of the gender equity. How I get a lot of these conversations where both genders, gender non-specific, will pull me aside and just say, hey, where do I start? How at my company, if we have nothing so far, we just have an HR department, it could be a small, mid-sized company. Where do you suggest that they begin and how do they start the conversations? I get that question more often than not. Like, I don't want to say the wrong things. What questions do I ask to actually bring this into kind of a safe space to talk about it? So what do you recommend? And I know that's a really loaded question.
Yeah. So what I would recommend, what we do in our organization is we want to create that safe environment. So we started doing diversity dialogue discussions. And basically that is based off of psychological safety, sense of belonging, and voice. So we implement a lot of those dialogues in all of our offices. We also celebrate different heritage months. So people can ask questions and they feel comfortable. But we really want to educate people about being authentic when they ask. And I'll give an example. Being an African-American woman, a lot of people don't know, are you Black or do you go by African-American? So we teach people in our organization to be comfortable to ask those questions and make sure that it's coming from a safe place. I would say that there's a lot of resources out there where you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and finding out what works best for your company. I know there's different sizes and organizations and companies globally. So how can you implement something that works and that people can utilize it, where you can have little TED Talks that you can post and email to employees? Is there different dashboards where you can get messaging out about having an inclusive culture? So those are certain things that we do around making sure that people are safe, making sure that our leadership is supporting all of our diversity goals and initiatives. And I think that's where it starts, from the top, right? We want our top to be well-rounded, well-educated when it comes to diversity and inclusion, because I know it's a sensitive topic for a lot of people. But how do you get people comfortable to talk about it?
Yeah, and I would just add, this is kind of, there's so much to say, and I don't want to, you know, I know we only have limited time, but something that we actually did, and we, United Rentals is a part of the American Rental Association, and so we actually, our CFO, Jessica Graziano, she is a female CFO, and she was the keynote speaker for their lunch earlier this year, and we had this question come up a lot, because when it comes to equipment rental, specifically construction equipment rental, we are very large, and so we have different resources. But in our space, you know, there's a lot of small companies that are just one location. So how do they really get the conversation started? And I think it was like 12 years ago, we just started having focus group dinners, kind of town hall, small meetings, to where some of the groups had 3 people, some had 20, but it started in Chicago. Our chairman of the board was a female at the time, and she just said, you know what, I go everywhere, and I'm the only female, and she didn't come from the construction space, so it was that more obvious to her that it just looked different. And so she was actually the one that kind of just scheduled a dinner in Chicago, and then from there it just kind of grew. We started having these town hall focus area meetings where we were asking women like what they, why don't you think more women are interested in coming to work for United Rentals? What brought you to United Rentals? Being more kind of just asking about their careers. And then from there, we created the safe space, but we never said, let us hear all of your issues, or like, what is it like? And then from there is really how our employee resource group was formed also, but it just started with just asking questions. And through that, many years ago, we actually found out that we didn't have female glove sizes in our company store. We didn't have the safety vest at the time that had the ruching to where it didn't look like you were wearing a bubble. So those were the kind of the little things that we started with, and now we do kind of open up and talk about ourselves and talk about our career path and speak up. What are you missing out? What are you missing out on? But our whole approach now is how do we get more women to be attracted to our industry, because the women that are a part of our organization are happy. We do pulse surveys, we do experience surveys. They're happy. I want to get more and continue to increase, hiring and of course the promoting into higher level management leadership positions.
Well, that's a great segue too. So thanks for all these segues, by the way. It makes my job really easy in asking questions of, and you all aren't as prepared for this question, but hopefully it's okay, just off the cuff, is into the recruiting space. We're all tasked with getting more younger generations involved. And for you all in companies, let's just call it the postgraduate age, whether that's 18 plus or 21 plus if they went to college or not. How are they asking specific questions in this arena for you, or are you feeling like you have to modify to say, okay, is it as inclusive as this next generation is looking? I know me, I'm 43, so I'm dating myself. We were kind of unicorns, and it was a novelty at first when I started and my generation started, and the novelty wore off, right? It was fun for a minute, like, oh, I'm the only girl in the room. And then it was, okay, this isn't fun. It was harder to be listened to. So we had more challenges. So I'm curious on this generation, as you all are going out and recruiting, especially with the sizes of companies that you are, what are those questions that you're getting from the younger generation that I know so many of us are trying to attract into the trades or into our companies?
Yeah, I would say it's expected that we do have these types of programs because it is a different generation. And so they also, Demi, there's certain things that you've experienced in their career that because of you and others, this generation won't have to experience, which is pretty amazing. But I've noticed that it's kind of an expectation where new generation recruits, or those that are maybe freshly coming out of trade school, getting their bachelor's degree, they're asking about the culture more. They're not as concerned with compensation or benefits. But it's all about the culture. What does it feel like? What does it look like? Will I fit in? Is it a place where I can grow? What is my next step going to be? What kind of training do you have? So from a developmental standpoint, they want to know what their next step's going to be. But as far as having kind of inclusive programs and things like that, I feel like it's kind of expected at some of the universities that we're at. But I'm interested to hear your opinion too.
Yeah, so I would totally agree with everything that you're saying. I know when we go to different schools to recruit, they're asking the same things. They love to see women represented, and that's one thing that we focus on is when we go out to recruit, we want to make sure that we are diversified in that area with different ages, men, women, all of that. So a couple of things that I wanted to add is they're asking about statistics, like what is the makeup of women in the organization? So Dunn, we represent about 16 to 20% of those women in the construction industry. They also want to know about the culture. They also want to know, what does my career look like in 3 to 5 years? What is that progression? Do you guys have any mentoring programs that will support me? And then also, I didn't mention, we do have a Moment Connect, and that's a women's group. So that's something that we're promoting as well. And then on our job sites, we do toolbox talks. And that, again, is making sure that people feel safe to speak up while they're on the job sites. The other thing that we do, we offer yoga in the office for women. We assign, if they want to participate, men or women, we have like book clubs, happy hour, if we want to go out golfing and things like that. So we really try to continue to promote women in construction and leadership positions as well. That's important to us, to continue to grow women in leadership positions.
Great. Well, and I'm sitting here writing, so I'm writing notes. I love some of these ideas, because it's just going to be in the back of my mind when I'm talking to people. One, I hear two things over and over that you're saying is, without you necessarily saying the words, psychological safety sounds like a huge concept for our industry. It's new, surprisingly. But again, I think this is totally my perspective, so I'm speaking for myself. But for being such a hand-on industry for so many years, it's that what a lot of people would consider that touchy-feely stuff, the feelings, where it's really not, right? It's more about building that safety you're talking about, and it's not safety in a cushy sense, it's safety in an authentic sense, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have psychological safety, this is so important for any leader, right? It shouldn't even be gender specific. Just if you're building great psychological safety with your teams, you're finding out what's the pain points, right, that you can fix. So it sounds like what you're saying is, if you're as authentic as possible from leadership top down, so everyone is echoing this. It's not just the HR department, it's not right. The D&I department, it's not PR and communication talking points, it's everyone, including the CEO, all the way to the front lines. And then that psychological safety of building it at every level of management. Do you feel like, are you training managers in this at kind of mid-level management positions where this may not be classically trained for them? Again, we're coming from more trade backgrounds, so not necessarily as many MBAs, and I hope that's not coming out the wrong way, but really on-the-job training has been their ascension plan, right? Mm-hmm. So do you think that this is really needed almost intensively at a mid-management level, or that early manager level who needs to hear it earlier?
I would say early as possible. I know we have a peer group of people that just got hired with Dunn. They're project engineers, so they're probably out of school about 2 years. And basically, I will come in and do some training, which is important because a lot of people, when they come in the organization, they're trying to understand, well, what does this business unit do? What does that business unit do? And how do we all collaborate together? So I think the important thing is getting that message out there early on so new employees understand it's important to have an inclusive environment, that it's important that you come to work being authentic, where you can be your best self and you can be a high-performing individual. And just making sure that when you do come to work, that if you look different, it's okay. If your opinion is different, it's okay. And a lot of people are afraid to speak up. And we want people to speak up, because we don't want our organization all to look the same, right? We want different opinions, we want different thoughts. So we try to encourage that early on with a lot of training and education around diversity and inclusion, because sometimes people just look at it as gender or race, and there's so much more to it. There's individuals with disabilities. I mean, I could continue to go on, different religious beliefs. So we really want to make our employees aware. And I think that awareness and that education piece goes a long way. Yeah.
That's great.
I would agree. We have kind of, our approach currently is, how can we touch on the topics more of inclusive leadership and and really what does that mean, and how can we make them learning moments versus a quote unquote training, and who is our audience. And we're doing quite a few different things, but this year, so every year we have an annual meeting for all of our branch managers and above. So it's about 2,500 people in the coldest place in America, the first week of January every year. And so it's the only time we have all of our managers, middle and senior level, together. And so this year we hosted a 2-hour culture workshop. And so it just all talked about what does culture mean? What does it mean to you? And then we also, we asked the CEO what it meant to him. And so it was the whole theme of the entire 3-day meeting was about culture, but we just dove into it in different ways, but we led discussions at each of the tables. So we, however many tables, like 250 tables, but it was in different rooms. But really we from this approach, we want our leaders to learn from one another, because it's by sharing their story, they actually learn a little bit about themselves. And that's where we really see those light bulb moments, is not by presenting literature or what they should do, but just creating an experience. And so we try to do the same thing with all of our employees. So we're very fortunate. We have Workplace, which is an internal Facebook. It's closed just to United Rentals, so it's a way that we can communicate, and it's similar to Facebook. So the majority of the population knows how to use it already. We didn't have to do some elaborate training, but it's a way that we can communicate. And so we actually did an initiative on Tuesday where we just kind of, we're all human, we're all unique, share what makes you unique. And so we actually have about almost 200 comments and about 600 views. And it was just all organic, just getting people to talk about themselves. And we don't have, everyone has access to Workplace, but I would say about 60% of our employees actually utilize it. So just through learning about each other, that's been like a 4-day learning process that everyone's like commenting, and we're just trying to touch it in many, many different ways. But whenever you think of psychological safety, tomorrow kicks off Mental Health Awareness Month. So we have an initiative that'll be coming out tomorrow, and then continuing on through the month, but then continuing on through the year. And one thing, like me coming into D&I, I had to do the same thing. I had to like look up in a dictionary, what does diversity mean? Because you have all these assumptions, but like, I need to know what it means if I'm gonna like, really start going in this direction. And so that's how we kind of started too, is just, making sure that our team really knows what we're trying to get at, and really what does inclusion mean? It means making sure that even if we are a little bit unique, that's actually what makes us a little bit better. And we can also kind of tie that thought process back to how we do business, to where if we didn't have a group of diverse leaders right now, we wouldn't be able to get through this COVID thing. Like, we're having to think of things differently. We have curbside right now. Like, we never thought we would have curbside, but you have to adapt and change and kind of take everyone's ideas and create one together. So,
I'm sorry, I keep saying that's great. I need to stop that. That's my new I was gonna say that's great, but it is great. So again, this is a great lead-in to a question that I have for you all, is kind of how we are operating in this COVID new normal, adaptive environment, whatever we want to call it, digital space that we're living in for however many, new months or minutes or years or whatever we're going through. What do you all suggest? I'll give you a case in point, because I was on a NAWIC, a National Association of Women in Construction chapter. I'll let it be unnamed, but they were very authentic about where they wanted to go in their spaces in their companies. And some of them brought up what you were just talking about, Kacie, which was, what if my leadership isn't diverse? What do I do when I want to help make change happen? Do I need to find a champion within my company? And that was my advice, was to say, okay, you need to look at the playing cards here. do you want to die on this hill? Is it something that you can champion and not be ostracized about, and not kind of look like, I know I've had points in my career where I was labeled as an ultra feminist by suggesting a women's group, again, just more traditional behavior. So it's nothing against the company necessarily. It was just very outside of their comfort zone. So what do you suggest if it's women who are asking right now, I like what I do, I love this industry, I may not have that diverse profile in my leadership. What do they do? What do they do with that if they came to you? And that may be a difficult question. There's a lot of ways to answer that.
I can take a stab at it. I would say, just me personally, like kind of thinking back on what I did, because 7 years ago, there wasn't as much diversity at United Rentals as there is now. And I actually, all of my mentors and sponsors, they've actually been men. They haven't been women. But they have had this unique kind of thing in them that they wanted to help me, because I think because they liked me more than just because I was a female, but they were really wanting to make sure that I didn't set myself back because I looked different or because I had a different opinion. So I've really personally just been super lucky to have those leaders that challenged me. So I would say, there's got to be someone out there. They may not look like you, but you have those sponsors and those champions, and it doesn't really matter female or male. Make sure they know your goals and know where you want to go. And then also, just like you would talk about any other issue, talk about the things that are a little bit more challenging and just say, look, I just need help. How do I go about this? But even though there may not be other female leaders out there at a certain level that you may not feel like have the same influence, I would say that there are men out there that want to help you and want to be able to talk about it. They're just not going to start the conversation because they're not the subject matter expert on how to be a female in our industry by any means. But if you do feel comfortable with someone, male or female, talk to them about it. Ask them, hey, this is a safe space. I have really just been struggling with this, and help me think it through, one, because that always helps. And then two is, how do you think I should handle it? But it has to be that person that you you have that relationship with too. So the mentors and the sponsors are key.
And I would agree. I would say allyship, that is key and important, making sure that you have advocates and just being authentic. I think at the end of the day, if people see your sincerity, they're willing to help you. They may not be at the forefront of it, but they will help you navigate and connect you with the correct folks to help bring about change. And that's what I really truly like about our organization, is that we do have male leaders who are willing to go out of their way to say, hey, you have a great suggestion, you have a great idea, and you're trying to help us be better. Let me connect you with the right resources. I may not be that person. And then the other great thing about J.E. Dunn is we do have a lot of women in leadership. And that makes a big difference, connecting with other women who have different experiences. Again, that can give you some really good feedback, suggestions, making those connections to bring about change. The other thing I find is how do you present it? How are you presenting that we need to make a change? I just had a call with my direct report today, and I was explaining to her, it's the way you message things that can really make a difference. And then just trying to gather all of the facts and what is the outcome? What do we want our outcome to be at the end of the day? But I truly feel that if you can truly speak about that, articulate it, that you do have leaders that are not females that will support you or connect you with the right resources and advocate for you. So I'm a strong believer of allyship.
Yeah, allyship's a great word. And it sounds like neutrality too. So go in with a neutral base, you know, just politic well with your allyship. And you're right. I've had some great, you know, hopefully I didn't come across too crazy on that one, but I wouldn't be where I am without the most phenomenal male mentors and bosses who did the very same thing, Kacie, and said, I don't care what you are, you're just good at what you do, and I want to see you keep succeeding, right? So I think I was lucky that way, but you know, we're still finding them out there. And you know, with Me Too and everything else, which were necessary movements, I think I get a lot of guys coming up to me who are leaders who say, hey, you know, do I wait for them to come to me? You know, how do I even start this conversation? So Cherelle, to your point, yeah, the allyship and just stating what you need and what are their stakes in that? Like, what do you need from me being a champion, right? That's a great.
It's good just to have people in your corner that believe in you. You know, they see your work, they see your value, they know what you bring to the table. So why not? I'm going to support you. Why not?
Yeah. So one more question since I'm already over, but this has been fabulous. And if you have any questions for Cherelle or Kacie, please put them in the chat box and we'll make sure we get to those. But so COVID world, this is what's on everybody's mind is how have, if at all, you adapted into everyone being Zoom? We are in essential workplaces, so have people on job sites. What in your roles have you felt like you've had to adapt to in the last 2 months, like the internal Facebook, but then what other challenges have you had in this new environment?
You know, I'll take it. I'll go. So when you look at our team, 20,000 strong, very displaced throughout the company. You know, our corporate team right now is able to work remote, so we're not essential. But the majority of 90% of our team is essential, and so we've just had to make sure that they've had everything that they need, and so we've been working through kind of the challenges of being available and making sure that everyone is safe to come in and their family is safe and what do they need, what supplies do they need. So that's kind of been the essential piece. And then for me personally, I need to stay home because I'm not essential. And so I can do, you know, what I do just from a laptop. But so that has started another conversation with our corporate team, and we don't have guidelines yet because it's all new, but we're also used to working, you know, I have coworkers in every state. So, you know, even we're on the same team, but we've traveled a lot. So we see each other a lot, but we don't necessarily see each other every day. And so, you know, we could be anywhere right now. But what I've learned personally is that there are certain people that do not like getting on video chat. They're not comfortable with it, and we shouldn't make them feel comfortable with it. So that's a conversation that's been started. And then for me personally, I have always made sure I had on my makeup on before I did a video chat. And so I've challenged myself. Y'all have tinted moisturizer, Kacie, to be kind of more open. I don't have to be so, you know, buttoned up either. So it's kind of both sides of the story that, you know, you don't have to join you don't have to join the video. You don't have to, you know, join it like you would as if you were stepping foot in our corporate office. But if you want to, that's good too. But it's actually really good to see each other. And it's a way to also not cut each other off when you're on these conference calls and you don't know who's talking. I love the, you know, my square here. And then when you all have your square. So we're kind of learning through the remote piece, but we're definitely not a remote company. We are essential and we are out there and our customers need us. We're servicing hospitals, the COVID check stations. We're really powering, doing the extra power for a lot of hospitals and then doing the complete build of the temporary hospitals. So we're needed out there, and our team, we have a lot of military veterans at our company, and so this is kind of their calling. You know, everyone is responding, and everyone's proud to do it because we are an essential business.
I don't know. Do you have time for me to respond as well?
Absolutely. These are the most important questions.
We're essential as well, and I totally agree with everything that Kacie was saying. My position is non-essential. And I would say the biggest effect that has been on me is I am used to traveling. Like 80% of my time is just traveling, and just to be home in the house, I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I doing with myself? But learning that I could still be effective with supporting our operations team from home. I would say our company has done an excellent job with over communicating. We have a platform that we use internally, and our CEO, our regional presidents, and our executive leadership team have been posting on that website in regards to our company, because everyone wants to know, well, what's the health of our organization, especially those who are at home, not on the job sites. So that's a great platform that the company has provided. Talking about temperature checks and things like that on our different job sites, and how we're supporting our community with giving back, and the company is matching 200% of what we give. So that's excellent as well. So those type of platforms have really helped out a lot, because a lot of people feel isolated, and just to have that reassurance from our leadership and that transparency has been very huge in the organization. But I could say for the East region, on Monday, we had our first virtual quarterly staff meeting, and we had over 200 employees on that call. But it took a lot of preparation for that. All of the presenters actually had to go on and record their message in advance, so it would just flow better. We couldn't take questions or anything like that, but it was a huge success. So just really learning to adapt to our new norm. And I would say, to Kacie's point as well, some people aren't comfortable with the video Skyping. They don't want to see themselves, and they don't want others to see them. And if we could just be more adaptable to that, and not judging people. But it's been working successfully, and our IT team is making sure that we are all ready to work, and if we have any issues, they're ready and prepared to assist us.
That's awesome. And I think the theme of today, and sorry, it's like super dark outside, and I try to not be in a cave here in my home office, but if I turned on an overhead, it would be like an interrogation scene. So I apologize if I'm like coming in and out, is authenticity, transparency, and we're all in this together. That hashtag, it sounds like from a corporate level too, no matter how big or small your company might be, just saying like, hey, you know what, that messed up. So we're going to start over, and just again, that authenticity, and saying we're all learning through this together, and not having such buttoned up rules, right? So, and that spills over into a very big job for diversity and inclusion in HR departments, right? As that, those baselines are established. But can't thank you enough for your time today. Again, we're going to record this and put it online. Thank you to Moen for sponsoring, always for Lowe's Home Improvement and Goodwill Construction Skills Training Center, who have been partners for these series, both in person. Someday we'll be back in person, but now virtually. So this is such a topic that you couldn't get in 45 minutes. We could spend days on this, like you're saying. So if you have any resources, that's a quick last question for you. I know, Cherelle, you mentioned it. Is there one or two kind of online resource sets or a website, someone that you would send to say, where would I even start, just to get the terminology down, things like allyship, concepts they could study as a leader?
Let me see. I just attended, what's it called? It is called the Marcus, I think it's called the Marcus Diversity and Inclusion Group. I recently attended a conference there, and there's a website where you can learn a lot of the D&I terminology, and the Google. Let's just say Google.
Yeah, the videos.
Great. Okay. Well, and if you think of any, we'll certainly post them to the Women at Work page, because I get a lot of those questions personally, just me being in this kind of Switzerland role, where they can ask me and say, what do you know? And I clearly come to the experts 9 times out of 10 and say, okay, what do you usually go to as a go-to? So Google it is for now.
Yeah, I'll send you some additional resources.
Yeah.
At this point, just start. I love it when people start asking, because that means they're curious. And then also, hopefully as leaders, they want to dive into this. So that's step 1, is actually wanting to make change happen.
Yeah, and one other thing is, like, what I do is on LinkedIn, I go and look at a lot of different D&I departments and officers and managers, directors, and I follow them. And there's so much helpful stuff that people share, because in this space you have to share. There's no right or wrong, and it's always evolving. So there's no book to read, no, like certain item, but I, sharing through LinkedIn, things like that. But also, I believe, so we sponsor a company called Catalyst. I think it's catalyst.org, but they're a company that was founded on research on women in the workplace, but now, for all. And they have some good free stuff. You do have to pay for some of it, but it's a good place to start.
Great. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you for your time. Again, be safe out there and keep doing wonderful things in your companies. Both of these companies, J.E. Dunn, as well as United Rentals, have such phenomenal programs for women and other, diverse and multicultural programs within. So they're great places to start, as well as to go to those websites and see what they're doing. So anyone that's watching this later or on right now, please do go to both of those websites and check them out. And then contact Kacie or Cherelle if you have questions, right?
Yes, please. And it was Marcus Evans Group.
Okay, Marcus Evans Group. We'll write that down. All right, well, thank you, ladies, and thank you for everybody who's joined us tonight. And we will post this on Women at Work, and get out there and make a difference.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank y'all. Be safe.